afternoon, everybody. Waldport City Council meeting of May 14. Have a roll call, please.
Councilor Virtue.
Here.
Councilor Dunn.
Here.
Councilor Dennis.
Here.
Councilor Holland.
Here.
Mayor Woodruff.
Here.
Councilor Campbell.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Okay, the first agenda item are the minutes from April 23 and April 27. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded. Any discussion or corrections?
I have a question in regards to the minutes. Is it possible that the minutes can reflect that there was no motion for a decision on this review hearing going before the city council? I reviewed, Rita was kind enough to give me the link to the thing, and I looked at it, and there was no motion made from.
So we can't include in the minutes, or we don't need to include if there was no action taken.
Well, but
So lack of action.
there was a letter submitted that was requested to be read in front of the council, and it's apparent to me that the council didn't even have the letter. Did you have a letter from me at that meeting?
I have seen letters. I can't tell you which meeting, how many meetings, because I know there's been a series of those letters. So I certainly have seen them. I assume everyone has seen them. I'm not sure.
That letter was included in the material given to all the councilors. So whether they read it or not, all of them.
At the meeting?
They had that in the packet of information for that meeting. Everyone had that letter.
According to the testimony that I saw, they didn't. So, okay, that's confusing to me. It said it would be, you said you would make sure that they saw it.
But you're not talking about that being in the meeting, something in the meeting audio, but somebody told you that ahead of time.
No, Dan said it on the recording. It's on the recording. That's why I asked for the minutes, because that's, when I looked at the minutes on the record, the minutes, in my opinion, did not reflect what happened at the meeting. And it appeared to me that the council made a decision without going through the motion in order to make a decision not to have the planning commission, the hearing put in front of the planning commissioners before the commission. There was discussion about it, but there was no motion.
I think, as I remember, and anybody correct me if I'm
You can go
wrong,
back and look at the tape.
I think there was consensus. I don't remember the vote either.
We didn't take a vote because I think what we established is that the approach we're taking was the correct approach.
We discussed it with the city.
So
attorney,
we didn't take any official action, so that can't be in the minutes.
Right.
We just left it standing.
And if I may, that if you were proceeding as planned, as you would normally proceed, there would be no reason to entertain any motion or take any action, because it would be proceeding as normal.
Exactly. So it was discussed, and we did understand that we would proceed as normal. Okay, we're still considering the minutes. Is there any other objection, correction? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, since we don't have any public comment, except for public hearing, I think we can probably skip over the public comment.
all right, I will go get Justin.
Okay. So the next item is public hearing. We'll open the public hearing and call for any abstentions, ex parte contact, bias, or conflicts of interest from any of the councilors. Okay, hearing none. Then I will call for objection. Is there any objection to anybody else about any of us hearing this procedure, this meeting? Sorry, I was masked. Okay, hearing none, we'll start. Justin, with your staff report, please.
Hi, everyone. So I also included, for your record, I received 2 comments after writing the memo and after the packet was put together. So those comments are provided to you there. It's 4 pages. Some comments from Brian Lottie and Christine Castillo, and also from Zeke Wyndham are provided.
Before I let you go on, I'm sorry, I needed to let the public, in this case, the viewing public know that different from what was in the packet, we are going to be keeping the record open for another week after this meeting, and we will be deliberating as a council on the matter at our next meeting, either a special meeting or the next council meeting. So I did want to make that clear to the viewing public.
And how will that be announced?
It's been announced already, I believe, elsewhere, and it now will be obviously part of the recording and on.
But I mean, how do you know what day the deliberations are going to take place?
We don't at this point, we may by the end of the week,
Okay.
but obviously it will be no later than the next council meeting, but it will be.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Can I make a point of order?
Yeah.
In the rest of the proceedings with Justin and the other 2 people who are going to testify, as city councilors, we simply can just listen. We don't need, there doesn't need to be any interaction because we're not deliberating.
Unless we have questions.
If you have questions, but this isn't really a response to the people testifying.
We're not deliberating, you're right.
And also included in your packets, Paula Lundin provided some additional comments that were received today just before the meeting. So in your packet, first you have the memo there, which provides kind of a summary of the history of the project. So this is the remand hearing for Tidewater Development LLC requesting approval of planned development, often referred to as Vista View, for 34 single-family homes and lot on 7.75 acres. So just some history. As you know, it started in 2017 and at the Planning Commission, and it was appealed to the City Council, and then sent appealed again to LUBA, who remanded it, and it went back to Planning Commission and City Council, and then it was now remanded again. So that's where we stand at hearing it specifically related to that remand. And that remand is included in your packet for review. That's LUBA number 2019-46. So that is included in the packet. And just for a quick summary, there were 2 assignments of air. The first assignment of air was broken down into A, B, C, and D, related to drainage and pollution arguments. And for sewage pollution, I'm just going to quickly summarize the LUBA appeal here. Sewage pollution, LUBA rejected the petitioner's argument regarding sewage pollution. And for highway stormwater overflow, that was also rejected. And then impervious area, those general arguments regarding increased runoff due to impervious surfaces provided no basis for reversal or remand. But for construction pollution, they state, in Lundin 1, we explained that the city must determine compliance with Waldport Development Code 16.60.030C4 during the preliminary plan stage. The city's findings in Iron Mark report are limited to post-development conditions. The The city's findings are inadequate to address potential drainage and pollution problems caused by construction activities. And so they agreed with the petitioner that the city's findings supporting its conclusion that Waldport Development Code 16.60.030 C4 is satisfied or inadequate with respect to drainage or pollution problems outside the planned area caused by construction activities, including grading, paving, and road construction, for road construction. Remand is necessary for the city to determine whether construction activities will create drainage or pollution problem outside the planned area. So the first assignment of air was sustained in part. And then the second assignment of air, I'm not going to go through the whole second assignment, but that air was denied. So that gives a quick summary of the LUBA appeal. So essentially we're here today. As a summary, the remand is required to allow the city to determine whether construction activities will create a drainage or pollution problem outside the planned area. And so the applicant submitted a 4-page document, which is also included in your packet with arguments. The appellant, as provided to you, submitted some information just before the meeting today, and also provided some testimony at other city council and planning commission meetings, and all of that is included in the packet for you. So as stated, there was the update that the decision is not going to be made today, and we're going to leave the record open for a week for additional comments to be received in that week time. So that gives more opportunity for public comments to be received. And at the next meeting, once that date is decided, the findings and conclusions document will be discussed and amongst the city council members.
Is there a civil engineering of the roads and discharge of waters plan in place?
So in a previous, the engineer at a previous meeting provided some documentation related to drainage. I don't have that directly in front of me as a date up on the record in terms of that exact report there, but there was an engineer that provided testimony at a previous meeting.
Do you know if that was the applicant's engineer or?
Yes.
Okay.
I think what I read in the passage is that LUBA said that pertains to post-construction rather than during, and so they rejected that as definitive settling of the issue. Am I correct?
That was for post, and so that's where we are in terms of during construction activities, is specifically what was remanded in this case. So that's really the focus of the remand, is determining whether construction activities create drainage or pollution problems.
So after construction, then whose responsibility is it? And if the people that are, and the civil engineer that has determined that the construction is done according to the state, and then post-construction, is that the city's liability, or is it the?
Actually, I think it was backwards, Scott, that LUBA determined that the report that was submitted dealt with post-construction rather than, so it's left open the question of during, I'm sorry. Is that correct? Did that include your report?
My memo here?
Yeah.
So yeah, in this memo today, we're looking at the during construction activities. And those were the applicant submitted the 4-page document with some new findings and conclusions, and that's included in the packet, and those are addressing the during construction drainage.
So if that concludes your, are there any other questions for Justin before we move on? So the fact that the proponents
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tracy McDowell, and I'm an attorney here today representing Tidewater Development, the applicant in this case. Mr. Bartoldes, who is representing Tidewater, was unable to appear today and requested that I assist him in this matter. So I'm here for you. I am happy to be here. A little bit about me: I grew up here and from here. I never really left. Traveled to Salem for law school, and now I practice in New York, and I'm raising my family here. This is the first time in all of my 31 years of living here I've had this opportunity to appear at a city council meeting. First, I'd like to request that all of the previous materials submitted in this case be incorporated into the record for this hearing. This would include all previous submittals, the hearing records before the planning commission and the city council, and the 2 LUBA opinions. And if you don't mind, I'm going to sit back down to the record. The council is familiar with this case. You previously considered the planned unit development and approved it. The matter before you today is upon a remand from the Land Use Board of Appeals on one very narrow issue. The specific paragraph of the LUBA opinion the city needs to address, as Justin previously stated, and I'm going to read again, is as follows. The city's decision does not cite any specific DEQ construction discharge and erosion control standards or city road construction and drainage standards. It may be that compliance with other standards could be a basis for the city to conclude that WDC 16.60.030C4 will be satisfied. The problem is that the city made no such finding. We agree with petitioner that the city's findings are supporting its conclusion that WDC 16.60.030C4 will be satisfied are inadequate with respect to drainage or pollution problems outside the planned area caused by construction activities, including grading and paving for road construction. Remand is necessary for the city to determine whether the construction activities will create a drainage or pollution problem outside the planned area. It's really hard to breathe through. So that's just a very narrow issue here before you today. Mr. Bartoldes previously submitted additional information to address the remand issue, and that material is in your packet. Much of the information in that submittal was provided to the applicant's engineer. The applicant plans to control off-site drainage with pollution methods that are typically used at the Oregon coast, including sediment fences, hay bales, chip bags, and other techniques noted in the submittal. In addition, the applicant plans to do the work on the property when there is dry weather. The applicant will apply for the necessary DEQ permits, and those permits will have requirements as to what the applicant must do to satisfy the permit requirements to protect surrounding property. Additionally, the applicant will be glad to coordinate construction activities with your Public Works Department to monitor activities and accept recommendations from them as to any requirements they might have. As you will recall, the city has required that the applicant construct the extension of Norwood Drive to reach the applicant's property. This is already a platted city street, and we are sure that the Public Works Department will want to work closely with the applicant and perform regular inspections on the work to assure that it is being built to acceptable city standards and assure that there are not any off-site drainage or pollution problems during construction. We believe it is important to reflect in the record that developments do not happen in a vacuum, and the developer does not get to pick and choose which laws and regulations it will follow. The applicant understands that it will have to get a permit from DEQ for construction and will need to follow all of their regulations. If other permits are required, those will be obtained as well. The regulations of the DEQ, which applicant will need to follow, are geared to prevent off-site drainage and pollution issues. The applicant has committed to follow the best practices as set out in the DEQ manual for the development of the property. Since the practices the applicant will follow are set out in the materials presented, I will not repeat those again here. It is important to note that the issue before you today is very limited. It is only as set forth in the LUBA paragraph, remanding this matter to the city. Therefore, any testimony that is not directed to that particular point is not relevant. If you receive testimony that people do not want the property developed, or any of the other issues that have been considered by the city of LUBA, those issues are not relevant and should not be considered. I understand that the opponent has suggested that this matter should be heard by the planning commission. That is not required by law. The applicant's material cites the case of Rosenweg versus City of McMinnville, citation 66 OR LUBA 164, year 2012. In support of only holding a hearing at the city council on a remand. There are other LUBA cases that support this position as well. Additionally, if this matter were to go to the planning commission, it would have been, without doubt, appealed to the city council. The city has a reasonable procedure that allows all interested parties to present testimony so it can be considered by the council. We understand that you will also allow testimony to be submitted after this hearing, which allows for additional input and rebuttal. We understand you will have an opportunity to review this information and then deliberate to a decision at your next meeting. The applicant believes that this is an appropriate procedure that gives all interested parties a reasonable opportunity to be heard based on the case itself and considering the concerns regarding COVID-19 at the state and local levels. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Would the council be okay if I sat, or I have very loud voice, if I stood back there, because I would like to do that and not wear my mask, and I feel safer back there, if that's okay. Are you all right with that? Thank you. Whew, very hot in here.
Welcome to open the windows and our music.
Oh! Thank you, Mayor. Oh, what a difference. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So first off, I just want to say to the councilors, the mayor, and all here, I'm very glad that we have this ability to set up and give you our testimony, both the developer and the representative for the developer and myself. I am very grateful for that. However, it has been a very confusing process, and I know that there are people who would have liked to have been here that were not able to be here, but I see how you set up the process and work to facilitate that. And we very much appreciate it. In the packet I gave you today, which was according to the notice requirements, I've noted a lot of things, and I don't expect you to sit here and read it. You will have time to do it between now and the 22nd, so then you can deliberate with that and anything else that comes in, as well as the submittals that Justin was kind enough to share with me and you also today. One thing that's very, very important is, besides the letters that you have received from me, you will see that I have 2 pages of signatures from the community and citizens of the community who have great concern over specifically, and I am going to identify specifically, the remand regarding drainage and pollution during construction. And that is all I am going to address here. If it appears that I am veering from that, I'm going to tell you in advance, it's because there are certain codes and requirements that are related to drainage and pollution within the city code and also within the Waldport Comprehensive Plan. And so therefore, I am going to, and the document states in there, has a lot of references to the comprehensive plan and other code that relates directly to pollution and drainage. So I want to make that clear to you, the commissioners, because you are going to be the ones to make the decision. Normally, the planning commission, as I understand it, is a lot more familiar with code and also the comprehensive plan. So I hope you will take the time to reference, as the representative here says, I'm very glad to hear that you want to incorporate all the records from the past into this, because I have made reference to that in my documentation here, which references drainage and pollution from prior testimony and brings it back to this remand that was made by the State Land Use Board of Appeals. So what I did is I went through and talked to a lot of citizens about the applicant's findings 1 through 7 that you have a copy of, and basically that's exactly what I did. I followed that procedure and noted where it is not in compliance or violation or does not adequately address the issues of pollution and drainage during construction. That is what the remand came back to the city of Waldport for. By simply stating that they will follow DEQ requirements does not necessarily address drainage and pollution problems. This forum, as I understand it and as other citizens understand it, is our last ability to make sure that you, the counselors, hear the concerns of the citizens on your decision should you choose to go ahead and sign off on this preliminary plan. In relation to that preliminary plan, it states in there, in the code, as well as if you go back and look in the opinion from LUBA, it states, and I quote, "The proposed development is subject to a public hearing before the Planning Commission. The city of Waldport is in direct violation of the LUBA remand and the city code development process. The code for preliminary plan approval states that the Planning Commission shall seek to determine the development will not overload the streets," which I know we're not addressing this, but this is part of the code. To overload the streets outside the planned development area, that the utility and the drainage facilities are adequate for the population densities and type of development proposed, and will not create a drainage or pollution problem outside the planned area. That is almost word for word what we are addressing today here. The citizens of Waldport request that the city require the developer to specifically show how this drainage is going to take place, because this is our last chance to make sure that that is addressed properly. According to Waldport Development Residential R1 Code, which this development is in an R1 zone, drainage is required to submit a plan with width, depth, and direction of flow of all channels. That has not been done on this last submittal. A plan shall be submitted showing cubic yards removed or filled, and a final elevation certified by a registered professional engineer for the removal of more than 50 cubic yards of material. I guarantee you, for the construction of the 300 feet of road, there is going to be excavation of more than 50 yards of material. There is no plan on how they plan to do that or where they plan to do it. The 300 feet of road that's proposed is public land. It is owned by the city of Waldport, but that is part of public domain. As I understand it, and as the citizens of Waldport understand it, once the road is built, the maintenance will come back to the city of Waldport. Am I correct on that? I believe so. The citizens of Waldport do not want to have to use city tax dollars in order to maintain a road that only public development gets the benefit of. But we have to pay the taxes in order to maintain that road.
That's not germane to what's going on here. That has nothing to do with what's going on here.
I beg to differ. So, anyway, I'm going to go on. In relation to pollution and drainage, the road and site excavation within the soils had past demonstrated failure. This failure rate will contribute to instability of slope. It will most probably have to have a retaining structure in the road, which will require an amazing amount of design as well as maintenance. This proposal by the applicant is unprecedented for any other plan development made to the city of Waldport. With the city taking over the maintenance, it poses challenge of drainage and pollution, and that is the relationship as we, the citizens, see that. The city would be well advised to require the applicant to provide alternate access points considering taking on other than considering taking on a future maintenance problem. Also, I want to bring to the attention, and also the Tracy brought up to point here, the past performance demonstrated by this landowner has not shown that they will utilize and protect pollution and drainage. As you all well are aware, by their not choosing to do that, all the sediment flowed into the back of the Forest Service's brand new bunkhouse. There's also documentation that Justin received from the Forest Service that there is great concern that there can be problems with the soils of that area. Also, you have basically three public domains there. You have the road itself, you have ODOT, and then you also have the Forest Service. Those three public domain pieces of property can be affected by improper pollution protection and drainage protection. The last wetland assessment, there is wetland on each side of the development. I don't know if you, our counselors, are aware of that. It is documented in the Yaquina-John Point Transportation Plan. It is designated that there is wetland above the development and below the development, very near and next to Alsea Bay, which is a conservative estuary. If those areas are disturbed, which there's a very good chance, I just want to bring your attention to that there is wetland above the development and below the development. And that's not only in the Aquinajon Point plan, but it's also in the comprehensive plan. According to, and this is definitely related to drainage and pollution, the applicant has failed to show environmental, social, economic, and energy consequences and has not done an analysis on that as per Waldport comprehensive plan. This clearly validates the citizens of Waldport to have the Planning Commission review that the developer or the applicant has actually followed all the correct code that relates to the drainage and pollution. And in the research that I have conducted and demonstrated in this handout, it does not meet adequate standards required by the State Land Use Board of Appeals. The finding states that the Public Works Department, as well as the recent testimony here, they said that the Public Works Department will monitor the development of the property and the public land road right-of-way. There is no city engineer working for the city of Waldport. Yes, I recognize you do have consultation there, but we as the citizens are very concerned that there will not be a certified licensed engineer on site during construction. And this failure could exacerbate irreparable damage for pollution or drainage. So we suggest that there be in the finding a professional engineer during construction. It is presumptuous of the applicant developer to assume and state in the proposed finding, and I quote in the italics, as a practical manner, any decision the Planning Commission could be appealed to the City Council by any party who participated, and is extremely likely that any party that did not prevail at the Planning Commission in this manner would appeal to the City Council. By holding an evidentiary hearing before the City Council on the remanded issue, the city provided opportunity for the parties to submit evidence to the ultimate decision maker of the city. No party is prejudiced by that procedure, and it provides due process to all parties. Wow. This statement does not reflect the views of the citizens of Waldport, who have participated in prior hearings and have established the protocol of the preliminary plan process, going through the Planning Commission and hearing the testimony in a public forum.
I don't think that point is an issue. We're talking about drainage and pollution. That's a process thing that's all, because I believe was rejected by the...
Okay, I am doing in summary here, Mayor. I am doing in summary. So I would ask if you allow me to summarize the end of my testimony here.
That's fine. I'm not meaning to cut you off, I just want you to stick to the thing.
At both prior Planning Commission and City Council public meetings, there were repeated verbal requests made to have this hearing in front of the Planning Commissioners. And it was ignored and not received well. It is without a doubt and evidence that the submittals and the findings made by the applicant to the City of Waldport dated April 13th do not satisfy or adequately meet the Waldport Development Code 1660030 C4 requirements. Therefore, we feel the remand by the State Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals stands. Preliminary plan requirements have not been met, and that includes the drainage and the pollution. As previous submittals have been reviewed by the Waldport Planning Commission, we would hope that this process would hold precedence, but it appears it does not. We, the citizens of Waldport, and all the signatures on these 2 pages, request that both the Waldport mayor and the city councils with the city planning commissioners, including all those elected and non-elected officials who are considering part of this decision and application and approval of this preliminary plan, to review the factors and the evidence presented in this submitted evidence and documentation with more than one signature regarding the remand made by the State Land Use Boards of Appeals. I appreciate you taking the time to be here, and I appreciate that I am able to speak for the citizens of Waldport that have signed this petition, as well as others who have not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, moving to the proponents rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple points that I would like to point out, and forgive me, I have to take some notes on my phone. Anyway, so I'll be looking at that, but I want to point out, this is a preliminary approval. This has been discussed in the past. The detailed engineering plan comes after the conceptual approval. It is typical that the developer builds to city standards and the street is turned over to the city. The street that is being built is a part of the city's transportation plan. The issue at hand is not all the various codes and how they relate. The issue is, can the city make findings that show the off-site drainage and pollution will not be a problem during construction? That's it. One more here. The planned unit development is located on common coastal terrain. The soil, the vegetation, it's all common to Waldport, and much of Waldport has been built and developed on similar terrain. There's nothing unique about this development in that regard. As to the comments regarding the hearing process, there's no requirement this is the same, and I will leave it at that. I also want to point out as my final point that this review is a 34-unit plan unit development. It was designed to avoid building on steep slopes and at the same time preserve buffers, provide for water runoff, and provide a public trail. If the property was to be subdivided without a PUD, it could have been over 50 lots. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there, can we ask questions?
I was going to say, if anyone has questions.
So, has there been an engineered erosion plan put forth?
I will have to ask Mr. Bartolus to answer that question to you in a submission while the record remains open. I'm sorry. I believe there has been, I understand that there is, but I will have to leave that to him to answer initially.
Can I relate past personal performance?
We're not deliberating.
Yeah, we're just putting out information.
At this point, we can all comment on it at the next meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think we can ask questions. You know, are we both going to be here at our next meeting, or someone representing?
Yes.
So we will have a.
It depends on when that is, that's why I asked. And the sooner I can know that, I would very much appreciate it, recognizing you all have schedules as well. I recognize that.
If that's the case, then maybe we just hold our questions until we're ready to go.
Till the record's in.
So in that case, I will close the public hearing unless there's any reason not to.
You want to leave the record open.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And set the specific date, so a week from now, May
Yes.
21st at 5.
Right, but I think we already announced it would be May 21st. May 21st.
Just to make sure we follow the proper process, my understanding was that Ms. Lundgren would now have a chance to also offer a rebuttal to the rebuttal, or am I wrong?
It's not.
It's not usually done that way.
Wanted to make sure we didn't leave an uncrossed T or dotted I.
Yeah, we have it up there on the wall, which is, I know it's kind of hard for all of us to see, but anyway. So, in leaving the record open, we did that mean we do not close the public meeting? Don't tell me we stumped you.
I think you may have stumped me.
How about you, Justin? You know the answer to that?
I believe that you will be closed for public.
You leave it open till the next day.
So we'll have the public hearing going on at the same time we return to council?
So it will be a reassumption of the public hearing.
So maybe we recess. Maybe we recess.
Yeah, till the next day.
Yeah, well,
Or-
you can go ahead and leave, yeah. However you want to handle it.
So in that case, we can dismiss the two
If they
testifying.
so wish to do the 75. What was that?
You're dismissed. We're moving on to other business. Until the next meeting, I will let you know.
I'm sure
The
they.
record remains open, and we will provide any testimony that comes in between now and the
I think it's Thursday, 21st, right?
21st.
A week from today, basically.
And how will I receive that?
You're receiving it now.
Testimony?
Excuse me?
You're receiving it now.
No. I mean, you're saying that you would, if there were comments that came in, you said you were going to share that with both of us. But I don't, what is the process in receiving
Well,
it?
since we're saying that we will receive it until 5 o'clock on the 21st, and you guys are going to meet then at 5 o'clock on the 21st?
We were going to discuss another meeting later in this meeting, so I don't know when we're going to meet.
But it's the 21st.
Oh,
I
okay,
don't know that it is
okay.
the 21st.
So whatever day that meeting is, the comments will come in until 5 o'clock on the 21st.
Right.
And I will provide you with the same package of information that I provided.
Can we make the shut-off time earlier in the day on the 21st? So that way, if we decide to have a meeting, so like shutting it off at 3 or something, so if we have a meeting, there's time for you to make copies and...
I've already posted it.
Yeah, I was, I've told that to everybody.
Not going to change it.
Thank you.
I don't think, I haven't heard there's no chance that we will meet the 21st, but of course we can make that determination if we go to that. We will make sure you get the package as always, and that you are informed at the time of that. Probably by the conclusion of this meeting, we will know.
And any and all comments that have been received today during the meeting will be included in that package.
Okay, that helps me greatly.
Justin, you ready to swap out?
Then you're having an executive session now, is that what you're saying?
No, we're just returning to our regular meeting, which we have.
Oh, well, I can still stay for the regular meeting.
Yes, you can.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's also an executive session
Yes,
today.
there will be that, but that's not till the end of the meeting.
What is that in regard to?
I think it says on the.
Litigation.
Water tank.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on.
Older Americans Month. I fit into that.
I qualify.
I would like to just thank the folks for being here Tracy will not be offended if you choose to leave.
Yes, you can leave, please.
Limit the number of people, okay.
You surely have better things to do.
I am going to go, thank you. I'm gonna go out this way.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice meeting you.
Okay, we
I
have.
don't think I'd recognize you if I saw you.
I don't think I recognize you with the mask on.
We have one proclamation for Older Americans Month. Those who enrich our community through their diverse life experiences, and I should say volunteerism. Many of our volunteers are in this category. These citizens do enrich our community by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, involving older adults in community events, other activities, and providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, use, and mentor. And without them, there would be many things that wouldn't be happening in our community. Therefore, I, Susan Woodruff, Honorable Mayor, do hereby proclaim that the month of May 2020 be declared as Older Americans Month, and urge every resident to take time this month to recognize older adults and the people who serve them as essential and valuable members of our community. And I think also this time of COVID, when many of our older adults are needing to stay home because of health reasons, obviously we've been encouraged by many people to keep touch with those people and check in on them and offer the help whenever we can.
So what is the cutoff for older Americans? Am I in the group or not?
You'll know when you're there.
This is my double nickel year, so I'm getting close.
When Art sends you a thing that you can
Oh.
now join.
Yep, already on that.
There you go. Okay, moving on. So now we're at our discussion action items. First one on the agenda is the discussion for the timeline for lodging restriction. Unfortunately, that meeting is going on and it's.
Actually, it's only
short.
about 5 minutes away.
It's only 5 minutes. Darn.
So are we opening discussion?
Yes.
I guess I have a question for maybe the city manager or our attorney. So what is our standing as far as now that the governor has made the changes she's done with phase 1 reopening? What is our standing to restrict certain kinds of business activity as a city?
So I would say that we still have the rights that were established under the county order and the reasons therefrom. I would not speculate as to the erosion of those rights. That would be a matter potentially for the courts to decide. I would suggest, however, that it has not necessarily strengthened the city's position in terms of the additional restrictions. However, that said, the county's restrictions do have the weight of law right now in the county. And though we are hearing anecdotal reports of them being flouted in these cases, that is still the restriction. We do have the right under, this was confirmed by county council, under the previous order to withdraw the city's participation and let ours expire, which was the consensus of the council at the time for tomorrow. However, that is entirely up to you whether that occurs or not.
I think also since the last time this was discussed, the county is now, what I understand, proposing kind of a phased opening of lodging properties with hotels, campgrounds, and RV parks opening first, and then allowing the rest of the short-term rentals to open at the next date. So I think the thinking behind that is to kind of take one step at a time rather than just going
So-
over everything.
But they're talking about the 31st to start the phase-in, right? Still, but
I assume so.
Yeah, they're still talking about May 31st
Yeah,
before they open.
unless
Well-
the meeting today
Well,
changes that.
I was gonna say, some of the conversation I've heard, I'm not certain that they're gonna, that necessarily they're gonna stay there. I guess my question would also be, if we let our emergency order lapse, but the county maintains one that goes through the 31st or whatever date, does that supersede our?
So interesting.
municipality?
Well, normally, a county order would, there's always an order of secession. The way that this order has been written, the cities do determine their own fate. The county does not override the city. And that is why the county has gone to extraordinary lengths to include the city, in the cities, although there's some. The county has gone to extraordinary lengths to include us in the discussions and attempt to create an environment where each city is concurring with their motion. I think the biggest challenge, and this would go back a little bit to the differentiation of phase plan, is that does start to create a legal distinction in businesses. I would not necessarily advise the city engage in that process. I think if we do continue, we should continue with a fixed date for all respective businesses that fall under the order previously, the hotels, vacation rentals. I think the phased plan, well-intentioned, starts to muddy the waters in terms of the county applying some different metrics that may not withstand scrutiny. So it would be my encouragement that if you do continue past the 15th, that you pick a date that
everyone opens.
that would open. I would also suggest that based on recent counts, we actually don't have that many within the city limits vacation rental dwellings. And our number of hotel rooms is pretty small. We are in many ways kind of a drop in the bucket in terms of the county inventory. Though symbolic, it would not open the floodgates, if you will, in terms of if we did one and not the other. We're really only talking about a certain number of rooms.
My concern is if we open on the 15th and everyone else stays till the 31st, that we'll be hit hard with all our rooms being taken, all our rentals being open during the Memorial Day weekend and this weekend possibly.
I would be surprised based on the anecdotal conversations I've had this week by property owners who thought we were already open. I would be surprised if most of our vacation rentals aren't filled right now, or a good portion of them. And from what I'm hearing, there is a kind of a persistent methodology of, I don't know what our hotel levels are at, but again, I don't know that that's a fear that would be, I don't think we're all of a sudden going to have, even if we're at max capacity, we just don't have that much capacity. So I don't think it would be a tremendous difference.
The thing that scares me, let me tell you what scares me, because I was at Ray's on Saturday. There's 12 motorcycle people, 12 motorcycles, and on them were, each had a man and a woman on them, each motorcycle. We all got off, formed a small group of people, and were talking, and then they went into Ray's, closely together, no social distancing, nothing, and then they all went into Ray's. And I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna destroy our town. This is just the start. So I don't know, I'm just really going crazy with this happening in our town. I don't know what to do. It's like.
But we have the majority of where our retail would be impacted by that would probably be from Bay Shore, which is not in the city limits.
You can't
We
control
have
it
no
anyway.
control over that. So I think what Dan's saying is, when you look at the total number of motel rooms in Waldport, and I know when I first started, we were talking about trying to get a handle on how many vacation rentals are in the city limits, but there aren't that many. And whatever happens is gonna be in spite of whatever action we take. And I understand, I've been torn about, what is the right decision, because if one death is caused, or even, 10 extra infections are caused by the action we take, that seems weighty. But on the other hand, I think, we started this process to flatten the curve. It was not to eliminate coronavirus. The curve has been flattened in Oregon, maybe not in the whole United States, but it has been flattened. And I don't know what the argument is for, for staying in the hope that we won't see any cases in Waldport. I've talked to some medical doctors. We are going to see cases in Waldport in the next 12 months. It might not be this spring and summer, but next fall and winter, we are going to have it hit here. There's nothing, we're not going to be able to stop it. And so what do we do between now and then? Because if we keep holding off out of our fear of what could happen, we get to next fall and we start the second round, what's going to be left?
I don't think that we can hold off forever, for sure. Obviously, things are opening up, the county, the governor is, how many counties? 19 counties have the right to open up tomorrow if they're, ready to do so.
28.
Is it 28 or 28? But I don't think all of
They've all been
them.
approved. Dan and I were discussing earlier, there's two that were denied, 3 that did not apply, and 3 that are still under review.
And I think it's important to note that of the 3 that didn't apply, I believe that they were important metro
That's
area.
basically metro.
So because of that, we may see, regardless if we have housing for them or not, we may see a lot of day trip visitors coming down to come to an area that has open businesses.
And that's in spite of the governor's specific thing that the metro area, they not travel.
Yes,
because
that is,
they're not
that is
open
unfortunately in
everybody.
spite of that, because in general, those are very hard to enforce. We ourselves, I think all of us have seen guests coming from the valley, and I think we'll continue to see that this weekend. Fortunately, it's going to rain, so that
Let's
means.
pray for rain for the next 3 months.
But I was also going to say, though, that at the present time, we are still in the rate of a 4% death rate.
What?
No, it's point four.
No, it's not in
It's
Oregon.
not. The guy that put that out just doesn't know math. It's 4%.
No, it's not.
No.
It really isn't. It's .4.
I saw for Oregon, it's 4%.
It's I just talked about Oregon.
Oregon's
I saw a chart this morning in Oregon.
Well,
Go ahead.
I might suggest, none of us are medical experts, that it's something best left, a specificity best left to the Oregon Health Authority, and that really, the focus of the conversation should be confined to whether we let this order expire or not.
I
think there's a lot to be discussed about the mortality.
How do we decide? I mean, some of this has to be decided on medical facts.
Just take your
risk.
calculator out and put the numbers in.
So what
It
number?
comes out .4, but as soon as you add a percent, then that goes away, because that's, 4% means .04. If that's 4%, that's just math.
I did the math, and I came up with 0.4%, and I saw other reports that said 0.4%. So,
Yeah,
not 4%. 'Cause that doesn't, we're talking about under 200 deaths. It's 130 for the whole state.
Exactly.
That's not 4% of anything.
Anyway, people are still dying, and we know that if we, I guess the most worrisome part about the opening up, and this is going to be an experiment, obviously, there's more and more feeling of not wanting to do this, masks or social distancing, and that's going to send us right back to, because if that happens and people stop cooperating and being part of the program, we will have a spike and then we're going to go backwards. So to me, it makes sense to take it a a little more gently and make sure that we can, the people understand that we have to keep conforming to this horrible routine that none of us are enjoying, but
People that aren't quite, not intelligent, but aren't up to the subject, don't, they think once we're open, everything's fine, the COVID's gone, kind of thing.
and that this is all stupid.
And this was all stupid. It was a hoax all to begin with.
However, I think looking at the Waldport page, those people aren't going to, their behavior right now is they don't wear a mask, they don't social distance, they're doing whatever they want. The evidence is from states that reopened, even like Georgia, where they did have another spike, but the majority of people still stayed home. When they take cell phone data and show that the majority of people are taking this seriously. And yes, there are people, but we have people in Waldport who mocked me for not even sharing my view, but just posting that Costco was requiring a mask. And so I don't think we're going to stop those people unless our retail businesses enforce you have to have a mask, which it seems like now even the grocery stores, the governor's requiring them, if they're going to be open, that they have to function in more required ways of one-way aisles and things. I think those are all important, and to me, that's more important than trying to stay closed, because in 2 weeks, you're not going to feel better about this.
No,
And in 4 weeks, you're not going to feel better. It's going to be months or a year and a half before you feel like, yes. But the truth of it is, I told my family, we're going to look back on this and like we do 2001, and I remember being able to walk friends to the gate at the airport and not take my shoes off and not go through a check. It changed, and wearing a mask might be our future, like in China, where, when you're in public, you wear a mask. And that was before COVID-19. And so I think there are permanent changes coming.
Absolutely, I agree.
And my statement at our last meeting was, I would much rather see us take action to open up sooner, but also, indicate our strong support for wearing the mask, doing the social distancing, encouraging our businesses in town to require those things.
I guess I worry, unfortunately, that just the fact that we decide to open up early is going to be the main thing that's out there, and it's not going to be about how we're encouraging, good behavior of the citizens. It'll be like the tagline, Waldport's open.
Come on down.
Yeah.
Well, what are they going to, what's wrong with that?
Well, I think we're setting for examples, and we all, most of us agree that we do need to continue living these.
The thing that has been getting me about this is if you're one way, you're right, and if you're the other way, you're wrong, and they both see it the other way. There is no wrong or right.
But I don't think we're having that attitude here.
Well, if you're taking it, then we're wrong.
I haven't, no, I just have a different point of view.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying. There is no right or wrong. Your view and my view may be different,
Exactly.
but if we're,
We'll take a vote, and that'll be what it is for us.
I love it when people say we're all in the same boat. We're all in this together. And the fact of the matter is we're not. We're all in the ocean. Some of us are on a yacht, and some of us are on the dinghy. The people on the dinghy are hoping that we don't capsize. And then the people that are in the yacht don't want the dinghy people to join them. That's where we are.
I think that, for me, that's been important. Our family is on a fixed income. And we're in a situation where this hasn't impacted our finances at all. And I know we are among the fortunate.
Right.
And there are several of us in this group who are in a situation where our finances have not changed. But I look at the other two and say, it's not just them. I'm also representing every business owner, every employee who's not essential, who hasn't been getting a paycheck, whose business who can't perform business and make money. And yeah,
Just a few weeks ago, I was labeled as a selfish person because I'm a rich white guy that gets away with anything. Okay, it was out there on Facebook, went on for 3 days. But the fact is this, I have 8 employees, 8 of them, that are dependent on what I'm able to do or help do. It's not just me. You know, I've got Laura, I've got Holly, I've got Bob, I've got, you know, and I can name them all. And they all are dependent on,
And this other time where they would all be going full-time.
I love our locals. They're supporting me tremendously, as best they can. But tourists are what help us. I have been paying all my people, whether they've been working full schedule or not. I'm fortunate that I can do that. I was able to get that PPP money relatively quickly. Not everybody did. But I can't do that forever.
So is that a loan?
It's
It's a grant.
It can be a grant, provided that you document that the money went for that specific purpose, which is easy for me to do.
But it ran out really quick.
Yes, it did, because the East Coast had a 3-hour head start on the West Coast. And Umpqua Bank, just for example, had 40,000 applicants by Monday morning, and it was open on Friday. And that's just that one bank.
I'm still waiting 8 weeks, and Uncle was the one who told me. They said, you know what? You have to accept that loan. Send it out to multiple banks. I got 15 different banks I've got it out to.
Right.
Hopefully one of them will come through, because if I don't hear nothing,
Right.
come in another 10 days, I have to lay one of my guys off. I don't have the money.
You know, it's, again, we can use all types of analogies. And Greg, I totally respect your opinion of work. When the guidelines are set, for example, the restaurants will be able to perhaps open at a minimal capacity. Social distancing is obviously a tried and true method of health. But you can't legislate stupid people. If they all come here and they en masse get together, we can only encourage them not to do so. It's like your biker group. I saw it. It didn't concern me much. They're, you know, you stay away from them.
Well, you go in the store though.
If you're in the dinghy, I understand, you don't want a bunch of waves. But, you know, keep going. And Susan, I understand, you know, you don't want to feel like you're setting a precedent because our city does something that another city doesn't. But we can't do that. I mean,
It's not just about our city different from other cities, but I think that we are an example for our community. And if we sort of say it's really not a big deal, welcome.
it is a big deal.
But see, I think that's the part where we feel the rub when you say that our opinion, someone is saying it's not a big deal. We're all saying it's a huge, significant, weighty decision. We're not saying it's not a big deal.
Right.
But if how are you not saying it's not a big deal if you're not concerned about bringing in people from areas?
Okay.
I mean, our nearest counties have huge problems. I mean, that's why Marion couldn't get approved, because they've got a number of cases and they're not handling it
But
very well.
they didn't meet the 7 points of criteria.
Right. But
We
they're not
do.
going to stay in Marion County. They're going to come here.
But
That's
they
the
are.
problem.
But as the mayor though,
Right.
they would have to look at both sides.
And we're in the yacht, we don't want.
You got businesses here.
Right. I mean, obviously, I think we're all trying to look at both sides, and it's a struggle.
Right.
I think every one of us struggle with how do you balance people's lives against the economic disaster that's happening around us.
And that's why for me, I feel like, I really do, you know, I have an immune disorder.
Right.
And I take medications that make it even worse. So for me, I do take this seriously, wrestled with whether or not I wanted to come to this meeting. But also, I do take just as serious that if, what is our town gonna be if 2 years from now, we can't maintain the water system because nobody can pay their bills because there's no economic activity? And I don't see that by delaying 2 more weeks, that anybody who has fears about the health side is gonna, suddenly those worries are gonna be gone.
One of the points that I tried to make at the last meeting was, when this all happened, some 7 weeks ago, it was March 16th, that was the day so what's today, 14th, almost 8 weeks ago now. Then, when spring break was happening, everybody had come close, no question about it, because I was at Seaside, and the place was mobbed. And they shut down pretty quickly because they were having a problem up there. But now we have all become more learned. And again, have we not, Greg?
I don't think so. I don't think people
See,
are,
I
I don't think, the people I see out in public are not social distancing.
Those are the people that I said you can't legislate. That's gonna happen in every walk of life, no matter what. Well, I never got a flu shot for my entire life until I met my current wife, Christine, who worked at a school. Kids are walking laboratories, right? I may have had the flu once or twice in my life, I don't even know. I was able to get over it perhaps pretty quickly. I have since gotten flu shots because of that situation. You learn about your environment and the situation that you're in. Now, let's just go for an example. We're all opening up. If we're all opening up, are you going to stay home?
Of course.
Okay. That's what a prudent person would do. But that other person...
But I still have to go to the stores, I still have to shop for groceries, I still have to do...
So you're gonna wear your mask, you're gonna wear your gloves,
You
you're gonna...
do exactly what we're doing right now. But to vilify the people that, if I were in Portland, I'd like to get the hell out of there right now too. Matter of fact, when my doctor said, don't come up here, because I'm a part of the Kaiser program, and that's where I have to go for most of my stuff. And he said, hey, if you don't have a problem, stay in Waldport, which is like staying at home. That's exactly what I'm going to do unless there's an emergency.
We do have like 40% though of older people.
Yeah, I'm one of them, and I am compromised just like Karen is. I'm
And so am I.
And I don't know if you pay attention like I do, and you probably all do since we're sitting here, but diabetics are some of the hardest hit people. And I'm one of them. So I don't take this thing lightly. But,
Okay.
It just seems like, we are opening a bunch more businesses as of live, right?
So what else, what's gonna open new in Waldport tomorrow?
Well,
Hair
first of
salon?
all, they
All
already
retail.
opened, all retail was
Yeah, all
already been
retail was
open.
open that it would previously close with the exception of
Right.
malls.
So what is that in Waldport?
Well, we don't have any malls, so pretty
Almost all
much.
the liquor
everything.
stores,
Now,
restaurants and Carl.
that said, there are a number of businesses that, due to the new precautions and the process, are actually staying closed for a couple days to be able to meet those standards.
Right.
Because it's a shifting landscape, bars, you can't sit at the bar seats. You have to have 6 feet distance between the different tables. There are a number of businesses, and I've been looking and kind of watching, that have said, okay, we're going to open, but it's going to take us a couple days just to go through and
Right,
do
make
everything.
sure we're ready, yeah.
There are a couple businesses who have said that they are not going to open because they feel, much like Greg, that irregardless of their ability to do business, that it is not yet safe, they're compromised, they feel that the risk outweighs the reward. And there are going to be businesses that go whole hog and are incredibly anxious and will be open first thing tomorrow morning. So I think we're going to see, much like anything else, we're going to see a spread kind of across the board. And that restriction is separate from phase 1. Phase 1 really is targeting the restaurants and bars and hair salons and some of the other specific businesses that are included in phase 1. But the governor's additional order actually eliminates most of the retail restrictions. And so most of the other businesses Now, there are a number of businesses here in town that can't open, and those are going to be some of the businesses that require kind of large gathering groups. Now, we don't have a lot of those, fortunately. But, for example, our library can't open. Our community center cannot open. These are ones that directly affect us, but there are some others probably within the community that there's no practical way to open, or they are included specifically in the governor's order as not opening till phase two.
Well, and I keep referring to myself, but my business is a little bit unique because we do have large gatherings from time to time. And we're not going to be able to do that. So I have a tournament, for example, that's coming up on Memorial Day, the Pastega House thing. We normally all get together, we do a shotgun start, and we all have dinner together. We know we can't do that, so we've already put a thing in place, because we're going to host it. We're going to go out in every 15-minute interval, and we know that the restaurant can't have more than a capacity of 6 feet or more together, right? And the governor said, let's try to keep it to a 25 or less. So I have tried to do a circle, the people that are going to have, our tea times are going to go, for example, from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and those that are playing at 2, 2:15, 2:30, et cetera, will have some dinner when they're finished, and then the ones that are going out at 4 o'clock will have a little bit of dinner before they go, so that everybody will have an opportunity, because what we're doing is we're raising money for Pastega House. We do it every year. And Pastega House, Ms. Lundy, are you familiar with them? Okay, I'll explain. It's as important this year as ever. The Pastega House is a home over at the Samaritan Hospital in Corvallis that people predominantly from the coast, over 65% utilize when they're there for hospice care,
Oh, okay.
surgeries.
I do know, because my husband, okay.
Everybody here
What is the name again?
Pastega.
It's because I couldn't understand it. Okay, yes, I'm very familiar.
So every year,
Sorry.
for nearly 20 years now, we make a donation to these people because we've seen so many come and go that have passed that utilize this place. And we're not going to not do a tournament because of this, because they need it, they need the money. Now, we won't have as much probably this year as we've been able to contribute in the past, but we always, even if I do it, I write them check for a minimum of $500. And usually it's around 11 or 12, 1,300. And we're going to do it. We've just come up with a plan to social distance and make sure that everybody still has that experience and recognize how important it is. So, just, again, I keep relating to my business, and I know it's a little bit unique, but we're not going to do 25 groups or more, and oftentimes we'll have 60 or 70. But just trying to do the right thing.
But last Sunday, my wife said she drove past one of the houses of worship, and there was 30-some cars in the parking lot. And they weren't supposed to be open yet, and that, unless you assume 30 cars, there was one in each, that still violates the 25 or more, and I'm sure there wasn't one in each car.
Well, of course, there's a big reason, to not conform to any of these.
Yeah.
So,
But again, I will say, if you can find the data that shows with cell phone towers pinging, that the movement around the whole country, but especially Oregon is in the top 2 for staying at home. And yes, we have a few regions that have some hotspots, but the majority of people in Oregon really believe this. And yeah, you know what? When I go to Fred Meyer's, I see the nonconformers, and they do stick out. But the vast majority of people are doing the 6-foot thing and avoiding each other in the aisles. And I mean, people really are trying, most of us. But there's a 1 or 2% that do. And I agree, it rubs me the wrong way when 25 people walk into the store together and in a mob without masks on.
Okay, shall we vote on this, or are we ready to vote on this?
So what's the motion?
It wasn't to just let it lapse and then
If we do nothing, it remains the same, I assume.
Do we make
So, for right now, fundamentally, I think it's incumbent on kind of making a decision. The consensus of the council, and there was not a vote.
There wasn't a vote.
There wasn't a vote. So the consensus of the council last time was to dissent from the March 15th, or dissent from the May 31st order and go with the May 15th. However, there was no motion, there was no official vote, there was just kind of an informal tally so that we could provide that information to Susan, who was representing the city at the meeting. I do think we need to take an action. I don't know, and I have to go look specifically right now, but I believe that, we do need to determine whether we're going to remain in the county order and part of the county order, or to withdraw from that formally.
There's a copy.
I would love to know what they are deciding, but we don't have that luxury. We're probably saying the same about you.
Well, and I think it's probably a tough conversation then.
Yeah, it's a
This is not
conversation
easy.
for everybody.
I will say that as of a certain period of time ago, I just looked it up, there were 3,479 cases in the state of Oregon. There were 137 fatalities. That is a 3.937 mortality, percent mortality rate. And that has, in general, been consistent across the country.
So that's more than the 1919, Spanish flu and a lot of other, those kinds of.
Except that we know if we had been doing testing in January, the actual rate of infection is significantly higher. That you look at, anywhere they've done testing.
We can parse numbers in any direction we want, and it's a bad thing. We all recognize that. But
I should probably interject in the conversation. We did receive 20 emails in support of opening, and one email against opening, and one that was basically neutral on that.
So the 20, are we talking about the whole slew of VRO? That one specifically?
But it should be noted simply because they were submitted in response to this topic, so.
I read them.
Well, I didn't really have a chance to make copies, because that's what came in just before the meeting.
Yeah.
Well,
I read them as they were coming in.
Yeah, I was reading them. I kind of agree with the one guy that wrote, I don't know how many of them he wrote, but it does seem kind of oxymoronic that they're thinking in terms of opening hotels before VRBOs, because you might have 100 people in a hotel that will have a far more difficult time of separating from one another than a family of 5 or 6 that come over and stay together. But
I think they thought that the hotels have the cleaners and the ability to do the kind of cleaning easier than.
I think that the companies that support VROs, like Sweet Home, would argue that they're just as equipped as anyone
I
else.
would agree with that too. And here's the other point. I mean, if you've got this sort of thing handy, which we do at the golf course at both the bar and at the front counter, although my bar doesn't do much activity lately, it'd be incumbent upon us to use that stuff. And I think if I were going into a hotel room, how many people don't ever even think about the TV remote? Probably the dirtiest thing in there. We use it. Well, guess what? I'll be cleaning that son of a gun. So this thing does make us think differently than we had in the past.
If you go to Dutch Brothers, they do not take cash. You have to use a card, you have to run it yourself.
That's good.
They do not hand you the drink. They set it on the ledge and you can pick it up.
That's
So
good.
that's about the farthest I've seen anybody, go.
That's kind of what, Mark was saying, people are starting to adapt to these situations.
Chubby's did that with, now you have to call in or order online, you can't They don't take cash or card at their location?
And Pacific Sourdough, kind of same thing.
Right,
You know, I
right.
don't think I got within 12 feet of the woman. She kind of just asked me my name.
Did you throw it at
Distance.
you?
Well, then she put it on the box
Oh, okay.
and walked away. And I walked up to the desk with the box on it to take the box and go. It was actually the fastest I've ever gotten service.
Except you had no choice. Did your box, whatever, did.
Which was fantastic too.
The county commissioners are still talking, I just got, Claire says, she said June the 1st, Doug's talking, and I'm not sure where he's going, and Katie
Well,
hasn't.
that'll move out to September 1st.
Well, is there any real point about doing anything different than what the county comes up with?
That's my question, yes. Especially with the opening that we're already going to have.
Well, functionally, and again, that comes back to, well, we have the ability to, go with something different. We have a very limited number of rooms, so it wouldn't be a tremendous effect. It might be more symbolic to the community, but it also might be viewed symbolically the other way. So I think it is a really tough decision for you all to make, whether to go along with what the county guidance is and to continue in that.
Well, the state regulates all the campgrounds, right? The county hasn't got anything to do with that. No. Right?
I believe the state regulates the state campgrounds.
Right.
There are some other, and truth be told, one of the complaints that we've seen from I believe it's the Celeste Mary, has been the number of people camping out in the wilderness, camping out in the roads. Any off the beaten path where the sheriff's office is not coming by as much.
The county does own a couple of campgrounds, I believe, like Elk City Road Park has a campground that's owned by the county.
Are we speaking most generally about well, both the hotels are in our city limits now, right? Because we annexed the other one.
Yes.
So it would be the hotels, McKinley's, AOA, the camps, any of them that are in the city limits.
Well, McKinley's is full anyway, it's full, it's been.
Well,
Well, if you're there for 30 days or
Right,
beyond,
then
you
it's
can do that.
It's been full pretty much the whole time. I've driven by there, it's been full.
So basically, all of ours are going to be covered by, the first wave of the campers.
I also
Other
think,
than the
when you think about the number of campgrounds just outside the city limits going up 34, when fishing season gets into high gear, it isn't gonna matter what we try and do. They're gonna
They're not the
be,
city anyway.
There'd be
I know, but we will be hit by the
Right.
retail impact of that.
Well, if we get a decision right now, I don't believe that the hotels will fill up this weekend because they won't be able to get the word out quick enough. I mean, we're talking about tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would like to see people be able to travel here for the Memorial Weekend.
Well, I think, and this is something we haven't really mentioned today, but I think it's important, this is not a black and white date for you. There's no reason whatsoever that you couldn't set an intermediate date.
That's what I'm putting forth right now, and I think that it's the 20,
I don't know what.
no, it's the 20th is
From
Memorial
Monday.
Day, so it'd be the
22nd is
23rd.
next.
Memorial Day is the 25th.
Right, so,
So I guess, hearing some of the letters we got, I believe, indicated that actually, if you anticipate Memorial Day being, kind of a full go, I don't remember if it was Sweden or one of the other ones, asked if we could do a soft opening where they don't market it, and it gives them time to test out their new cleaning methods. And so for me, it seems like letting things lapse or expire, or opting out of the county one now, depending on what the county does, and being open for next weekend. I mean, we're talking 8 days is Memorial Day weekend. And being open, to me, I think, again, I would say, I would like to see action that also, again, encourages everybody to wear a mask in public and everybody to maintain 6 feet of distance. in whatever action we take, because no matter what we do, again, I would like that to be part of our encouragement, even if it won't make any difference on what people do.
And if the Oregon Health Authority comes up with any rules or regulations about hotels, motels, that we could have that approved already, so.
Well, they said they're gonna review this in 21 days.
Yeah.
And, you know, it may, Greg, you may be proved correct that, you know, people rush over here on Memorial Weekend and we're inundated. I have to say that when I travel and stay at a hotel, I don't generally go shopping at Ray's. The people that will be shopping at Ray's might be the campers.
Yeah, that's probably true.
You know, I mean, when you go to a hotel, first thing I do is not go to Walmart.
That's true.
I go to the restaurant.
Although I think our spot, I think our camping spots way outnumber our hotel rooms.
They do.
Yeah, I do think that this is going to be the weather. No, I can't speak to next weekend.
This weekend, I'd make a motion that we let it lapse and go, by the way, that we've,
So I would just clarify that you would want to withdraw from the county agreement and then set a specific date for Walmart.
yeah, a specific date. My specific date would be next weekend. I'm open for discussion next weekend. You know, the soft opening thing was kind of an interesting comment, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm not going to advertise to the entire world that my restaurant is going to go back to full swing, because I'm not. I'm just going to, you know, I've got a nice following of people. Sue and Ray like to come up and sit on the patio and have a burger. And sitting outside is, when we do have decent weather, is an outstanding place to do that. I'm not going to go tell everybody. I'm just going to kind of let it flow into, you know, because I'm not prepared. I mean, I'm prepared from a standpoint that my staff is aware of what's going on, but,
I would second your motion for next weekend.
So that would be,
23rd,
No,
you want Friday or Saturday, or what?
Friday the 22nd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's possible for clarification on the motion, because one of the issues that may end up arising from this is the fact that there are a lot of vacation rentals that think they are in Waldport, that are not in Waldport.
Yeah, they're county.
So, I don't know some language to
Okay,
affect, those vacation rentals who pay transient room tax to the city or
Within Waldport city limits.
no, I like what she's saying, because maybe we'll get some more to start paying. Because they can't open unless they're paying their tax.
Also, Bay Shore pays us.
I wasn't even thinking in those terms. So I think then that the two hotels and our vacation rental by owner and the short-term rentals would be permitted to open, the ones within our city, on the 22nd of this month.
Doug wants to go till June 22nd, Katie's till June 1st.
Any further discussion?
And you did second that?
I did second that, yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I just referred in my pea brain what they did in the Jaws movie. And they said, oh my God, 4th of July is gonna be here, we've gotta get this beach open, whether there's a shark there or not.
I guess it's a point of information that the chamber did vote last night to cancel the fireworks.
Cancel fireworks.
Councilor Hall, would you be so kind that you're communicating with Commissioner?
I just let her know that we're going on
Thank you very much.
5/22.
Great.
Thank you very much.
We'll be Lincoln County's test pancake, she said.
The next item is the business license discussion, and I look to our superintendent for.
All right, so this is actually an interesting one. One of the challenges that we've been looking how the city can help its businesses. There are a number of programs going through different communities that are really outside of the realm of what we have available to us in resources. We are still exploring and looking for outside groups that are providing resources that we might be able to come in with a small percentage match. And we are eagerly awaiting the state to release some of the funds that were provided by the CARE Act that are supposed to come to different communities. That said, Waldport does not have a huge coffer in which to draw upon. And so in the discussions of the different things that we can do, one of the issues that Rita brought to my attention was that it is time to send out the business license renewal bill, essentially, which is not insignificant. I mean, it's small, but it's not insignificant if you're not working. And my first response, my gut response was, well, let's hold off on sending that bill while we have closed businesses, while businesses aren't able to operate.
Could we do one pro rata?
So I think, and the reason I bring this up is, it brings in about $13,000 a year for the total number of businesses that we have. And so the question that I raised to you is, how do you want us as a city to handle that? And you'll see that I don't have material here because what I'm looking for from you is, what information would you like me to either bring back or, in general, if you came up with a suggestion, what would you like us to do? We do have potentially a walk-on resolution that you could do today that simply just waives the fee for the year. But I wanted to leave it up to all of you to determine exactly the pros and cons, because it is $13,000 of revenue, and our budget is not exactly flush.
Yeah.
But at the same token, I found it very challenging in the first week of my service to the community to send out a bill to businesses that were shuttered.
I would tell you, we just looking for information, and last night we discussed the same thing at the chamber meeting, because it's also the time that the chamber normally sends out the membership, billing. And we decided to wait to do that until at least probably September. Hopefully the summer will bring, some level of business back again, and so we will not be sending bills at a time when people are, really stressed out. And I think we were also going to offer a monthly thing that probably we do not want to do for, our lesser amount. But that's just a point of information.
I would entertain the idea that if we do a pro rata and forego the first quarter and just bill and have an explanation that we recognize that it's going to take time, but, we're not opening up.
You just want to read it for him.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how that would look. I mean, how that would.
One of the challenges here is that it's a license from a period of time to a period of time.
And ours is to, license.
And so if we hold off to sending if we held off for a quarter, for example, and sent it out a prorated bill, their licenses will have expired. If we send out a bill now, but with it at a lesser amount, which we certainly can do, it still is sending a bill to a lot of businesses, some of which haven't been operating for 2 months, have no income, and it might be construed very poorly. So I think that there are absolutely a bunch of options, and if there's information that I can bring back to you in terms of kind of what that revenue stream looks like, or if we did it this way, what that might look like, I'm happy to do so. But I look to you for direction on what you would like me to do, so that we can start putting that package together.
Well, I know when you talked to me a bit previously about this, there was some discussion that all cities don't have business licenses. And what I don't know is what other licenses might they have. I mean, some businesses are regulated by the state. I don't know that all often.
So any entity doing business in the state of Oregon must be registered with the state of Oregon. You can't start up a business here in town and run it without registering with the state. You don't get a tax ID number.
Okay, okay.
And so, based on that, you do have that is kind of the de facto, is a business registered. You look at the state registry, nobody calls us necessarily and asks whether we've done it. One of the other pieces in that discussion that Rita and I had was, have we ever used the business license as a piece of enforcement? And not so in the last 25 years.
Because we don't have much of any kind of enforcement, so that's.
Well, I can tell you the state's not looking at it from that standpoint because they doubled the liquor license from 500 to 1,000. And I've already received my bill. And I haven't been able to sell beer for 2 months. So,
Dan, if we were to decide to give the businesses a break financially, like 1/4 break, you could send out the license for a year and with the price tag on it, but the due date being end of September.
And that's the type of direction that we could put together a package for you next time. We could absolutely do that.
what's our fiscal year?
So the challenge there is if they don't send they would need to send something back saying, yes, we want our license. But then we would print out and send them a new license. But then we might have people who then just never send in a fee. Or if we waited to get to the fee, we get into that period where we've got July, August, and until the bills come due in September, and we send them a license, where they're technically just not licensed by the city.
Right.
We could send a message saying, if you have an active business license, it is extended through a period of time.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah.
So I guess the guidance would be, what period, is it a quarter, is it, 4 months?
Well, would we change it to reflect that each and every year and just kind of waive the first 3 months, July, August, and September, and then just pick the business up at that time, or we do it just this year and then start billing again next
We
year?
probably start billing again at the same time, just so we're back on a fiscal year. So the fiscal year cycle is a big
Well,
one.
that's fine, because I think people have at least, 3 or 4 months to get their ducks lined up, and they'll know by September whether or not they can afford to do business in Waldport.
Well, I think we make it we make it due by, October 1st or 10th, whatever I don't know
Yeah.
what our normal day of it, what day of the month is it usually. If it was usual, when would we be?
Well, we have, the business license itself is done by ordinance, okay? And that's what contains the language about the fiscal year, July. The fees are set by resolution. So it will all depend on what action we take. The ordinance is written that the fees are due by the 1st of July.
So I'm
For license
first
fee,
of October.
yeah. The penalties are applied if you don't pay during the current, after you send the notice, if you don't pay. There's a 10% penalty that's applied in August, and a 15% penalty that's applied in September. Now, just quoting from my memory, so I might be off by numbers.
So there's 2 months before you.
But, yeah, but it is, and then the other thing that, the other piece of information that you should probably be considering is the fact that a business license base fee is $40. So,
Yeah, it's not huge.
well, unless you have the open for 2
No,
months.
I know, that's why I was doing the pro rata thing, but I think that if we just, extend the courtesy of saying it's due now that we have until the 1st of October to get the thing paid, that seems reasonable to me.
And we can figure out the
Yeah, we can figure out the logistics of what.
and bring you a package that you can vote upon before the July deadline. That would then meet all the.
But again, I think as long as you're sending the message that right now, for those who have a current business license, their current business license still allows them to do business while we get this all figured out.
So do we have a consensus of 3 months or 4 months? I guess that's is it a quarter?
It'd be July, August, September, so the first of October. would be the-
Okay. We will so do so.
Is anybody disagree?
No.
All right. The next is letters of interest for the council vacancy.
So is there more than two?
There is just 2.
Let me see, where's the other?
One in the,
Your packet.
Oh, it's in the back.
page 67.
Yes, 71, and the other is on
And you have pretty wide latitude here. You can choose a candidate outright today. You can ask them back for an interview, or you can decide not to fill it. I mean, you have fundamentally the entire control over this process. It's just what you want to do and let us know.
I know historically, I mean, we've always had problems even having anybody and having to twist arms. It used to get candidates. So if anybody was willing, pretty much we were willing to appoint them. It makes it a little more difficult when we have more than one, because if we were to choose one of the two, obviously we are letting them a leg up for the election, because incumbents do have a leg up. So that makes it a little more of a struggle, and we tend to be transparent and let the public decide. But you're right, we do have the right to make what we choose. Having said that, any discussion?
I will introduce that.
Yep.
You likely know Heidi, so
Who would you like to see them or talk to them or
I can rely on everybody else's knowledge if they know that.
I've been trying to recruit Heidi ever since I've been elected to my 2-year term to run for the election whenever I'm kicked term limited out. So I think she's a good community person, and I appreciate her intelligence and her hardworking attitude. I don't know the other gentleman at all, but I think Heidi would be a good asset to have on the city council.
I would vote for Rick. I know Rick personally, he's food bank, fire department, chaplain, he's been in this community so long, people respect him, he knows how things run, so, I think he'd be a good fit.
I think they're both good, I do know them both. I did help to recruit Heidi to apply for the Dan's job. I know her well, I've worked with her. I also know, actually, Rick is now my neighbor. That's fairly recent, but obviously I've known about him for a long time, so I do feel we have two good candidates. And female, would be nice to have one more female, but that's probably not the right criteria.
We are very heavily.
Well, are we gonna have another meeting this month?
That is going to come up.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to have another meeting this
Uh-huh.
month, and then it will be up to you to tell me no or yes.
All I was thinking was that if we were going to have one, that if both of those people show up, would that be unreasonable?
Well, it depends on whether I guess
Yeah.
maybe the first higher level is, do we want to pick somebody or do we want to let it go to election?
Oh.
If we say we want to pick someone, then obviously that falls.
I thought we had already determined that we were going to have somebody seated.
Although I was maybe.
Oh,
determined-
That you were at the other meeting.
Okay,
They just
yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
We had discussed this, and we all.
Because I would suggest like leaving it empty. They said they wanted somebody because of the situation we're having now.
But that-
If we had a split vote, we just thought,
Six.
or
It'd make it easier.
we recently had a meeting where there wasn't a quorum, and so leaving an empty seat, either having meetings where you don't have a quorum or having a even vote split.
And it's not just till November, it's actually till next January.
Yeah, January, that's
Yeah,
true.
right. But I think at that point, also we only had one candidate in hand. So whether that makes a difference or not, I don't know.
Actually, at
Well,
that point,
Dan
we
can
didn't
speak
have
to
anybody.
Who else is set on, has been seated on the planning commission? I know Dan had that. You had Ben as well at one time?
I was told that that was the best way to make your progress towards city council was being the planning.
What's your opinion on that? I mean,
I think especially in light of like hearing a Luba appeal like we did today and stuff, I think spending time on the planning commission for me was extremely helpful to get a grasp on when that kind of stuff comes to us.
Has Mr. Booth been on the planning commission?
No, he has not.
Heidi.
I just have.
Yeah, she currently is.
I thought we thought that it was prerequisite that you should be on the planning commission.
It's not,
You know,
You had to serve your time on there before you came up.
So-
it's not prerequisite.
I know, but it's a good experience to have.
And tax experience is
Yeah.
a little tricky because these are elected positions to assign prerequisites.
No, I'm just kidding.
I always encourage people to do it that
I
way.
think it is the best way because you learn a lot there basically that you do need to know.
Well, now we're gonna have another vacancy in the planning commission, so.
Exactly.
You,
We have a couple vacancies on the planning
and,
commission.
well, now you're gonna have another one if we do that, so.
So I will say that in the past, when we've had more than one candidate, we have
Put the other person.
invited them to ask them questions.
Because that's how we do it.
That's how,
Again.
yep.
And I'm still kicking somebody, I just can't recall who it was. That chose me over you 17 years ago.
So along those lines, we certainly could invite them to that meeting, especially if you agree to a second meeting this month, so that we could interview them. You could also send them a questionnaire. You could put together some questions, send them to them, get their written responses, and then make a decision from that. I think you have a lot of latitude here in what you want to do. And just let me know.
I think maybe get some questions from us, if, people want to send me questions, we could put together a list of questions that would be the same questions for both of them, I would assume.
Yeah,
About,
definitely.
why do they want to be on the planning committee, and what's their background, whatever we said, which would give us kind of a starting place for interviewing them.
The old criteria was, can you fog a mirror?
On Facebook, when somebody threatened they were gonna vote me out of office, I said,
Please.
I ran unopposed, I paid the $50 to get in the voters guide. So have at it, I encourage you all to come after me.
Exactly.
I demanded a recount.
So are we really, that's a good way to.
I guess that's.
They don't seem very qualified, I would see to those of you that know these people.
Okay, so you were going to send questions to
Today is
Susan?
Thursday, so we don't, well, let's talk about when we're gonna meet again, I guess, and then that will kind of determine the cutoff date.
Okay, so, under other issues, I would like to suggest that due to the needing to complete the deliberations of the public hearing, and due to some changes in how we are looking at the meter project that we've talked about, I would like to ask that we maybe consider the 28th or some date around that time to have a council meeting that the agenda items would be to address, to review the meter project, and I will put together the package for you of what that looks like. You will have had the budget meeting prior to that, so you have a good sense of why we're asking and talking about what we have. And then along with that, we could then do the deliberations. You could either interview or you make a decision on the candidate choice based on the question. And then there's a potential for an executive session that we'll talk about in today's executive session. That could be dealt with at that point.
So we would be having budget committee.
On Tuesday.
Budget committee is on the 26th.
And then another meeting.
And then Rita and I discussed this back and forth a bit. We were suggesting maybe doing it on Thursday because the budget committee tends to drain the life out of everyone involved. And it gives you a day to recover.
And also historic.
I'm not going bowling this year.
Okay.
For the first time.
That bowling trip got
No
canceled.
excuse to start.
And also historically, when we have our budget committee meetings, we normally have them on a Tuesday with the caveat that they can be extended to that week's Thursday if there were additional discussions.
So we already had kind of a meeting.
So it's already kind of a placeholder anyway. It's been a few years since we've had more than one budget committee meeting, but anyway.
And I'm doing my absolute best to make sure that we
Yeah,
don't
but this
have
will be
any.
another one of those.
What time is it?
1:30?
The budget committee meeting will be at 1:30.
On a Tuesday.
No, I mean on Thursday.
Well, that's up to you.
Thursday, it's up to you.
I would suggest the normal 2 o'clock timeline, but
Okay.
So, we need a motion or just consent?
I hate you guys.
Okay, we all good with the 28th at 2? And now, Paula, you have a date? You have now a date, right?
I guess, okay, I'm writing it down.
All right. That's good.
all right.
Okay. So, I think we're at that. Are there any other
Committee.
issues? Are there any other issues? Hearing none? Yes. For committee reports, I guess one committee we now have is the Parks Committee. And we are moving ahead to try to get the planters renovated and looking beautiful for the city. We also have Jimmy cleaning up some things around town. So I think as you start watching for things, you will see that things are looking better. And I think we intend to make sure that that continues to happen. So we're very pleased. We hope we can sustain that.
I hope so too. I think budgetarily we have managed to do that.
We do have an offer from the Steel Rock Garden Club to help fund the plantings. So that part will not impact the city's budget. Grateful for that. Very generous of them. Having said that, I will continue to keep you up to date on what's happening. But the planters are our first project. So, any other community reports? And we'll be having to.
You put it on there for use.
I did mention to Dan in an email that Carrie and Greg and I had kind of started a social, I don't remember what it's called, but it was because the county came to us and asked us to do the harm prevention van, and then we had a couple other things we were considering about how we interact with harm prevention.
So
What?
which band?
Harm prevention?
The drug needle exchange program.
Oh.
But what happens then, anyway?
COVID-19 maybe.
Well, it was months before.
Yeah, it was a long time before that.
Like many things, it died on somebody's desk.
Yeah, evidently.
How are you going to divide it? Is that what you tell us?
So I asked Dan to send an invite to the county harm reduction person to come present to us, because before I had just passed on the request. And so I think maybe a presentation, because when we just say needle exchange, that doesn't,
No, that's not the whole thing.
there's much more to harm reduction and what they can do, so.
And I was going to try to target that for the August meeting, unless people were on vacation, and then I felt it was an important topic, so I wanted to make sure that we had everything good to hear. So if you think you're going to be away in August, let me know, and I'll try to use September or October.
Anything else for the council? If not, we'll, staff person.
Thank you all. I'm happy to present fundamentally the first city manager report. Obviously, I'm trying to send a weekly briefing that goes over a lot of the just kind of happenings so that you get caught in the grocery store, kind of know what's going on or what decisions have been made. And so I'll go through the ones that I've got in the packet, and then I'll go through some other things that have come up, just so we cover them. The first is the franchise review. I've listed up the different franchises we have. This is the time or opportunity to, if any of you want to have a discussion with a franchisee, to give them a notice so that they can come and present. It is not necessarily as critical for the June meeting, although it's convenient just because of fiscal year. Most of the franchisees are on a rolling 5-year franchise license. And I will say we do have a franchise in place already with Wade, so that when they are spinning up into operations, and I've actually, I'm going to meet with Pete on that, just to make sure that it covers, because it was originally with COSCOM, and they transitioned away. But it should cover that, and we should be good. So if there are any franchisees that you would like to invite, now would be an opportune time to let me know. I'm going to put everybody's rates down and what they look like.
Do we know if dollars for
So they stopped by briefly to just talk about some of the challenges that they were experiencing. I would not be surprised at all that they did not ask at that time to come in for an increase, but it would not surprise me at all that they are having some financial difficulties given the drop of consumer overall. That said, a lot more people have been home, so they're getting a lot more.
I was going to say, I have more trash.
Yeah. So it will be an interesting discussion. One of the things I did talk with them was doing, because we don't have, so the beautiful thing about this last weekend generally was the great garage sale that unfortunately didn't happen. And the reason it's beautiful is it's when you get all the stuff in your garage that normally you have no idea what you're going to do with, and you try to sell it to someone. Not doing that, I think we've accumulated a certain amount of things that necessarily we kind of wouldn't mind getting rid of or putting out. If you're driving around town, you're already starting to see some of that with people putting treadmills or exercise bikes on the side of the road with big sign that says free. I did have a conversation with Dahl on the idea of doing kind of a community trash pickup, where instead of the normal trash cans, if you had large items, you could put them on the side of the road and they could come by and pick them up and dispose of them. There was some interest in that, although there was some concern about it being taken advantage of by people from out of town. One of the things that I considered instead is you bring kind of your bill, show that you're an adult customer in town, and you have a free dump day. And then that could be organized by people who had trailers so that folks could put some of those bigger items. That was discussed, nothing really came of it, but we were just tossing that idea out there. And this, again, it's a challenging time to try to implement something like this. So it may be something that we end up doing or try to do in future years. But, there was some merit to kind of finding a, I think Florence or your house calls it Clean Sweep Day, where you're able to just get rid of some things that normally were challenging.
How they do theirs though is that it's at a central location. You can bring your stuff, you can take away stuff.
Well, and to be honest, there is some real merit to that.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I know that my family would love to clean out,
Yeah.
there are families who would probably have young kids and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Our daughter's 15 and could care less about her little toy kitchen when she was 2. These are the type of things that I think often sit there, rot, and get thrown in a dumpster. Whereas if you had a communal location, you might find some horse trading, you might find some people who are like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
And then whatever's left goes away.
Goes away.
And they don't charge for that, so I think that is a great community thing, and it is a chance for people to get rid of stuff rather than dumping it into the forest. Or leaving it, where you don't want to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if they're willing to do that, I think, something like that would be good.
Well, we'll continue that conversation, and/or if they show up or ask to come, we'll let you know. Are there any other franchisees that anybody wants to have?
Are there any minor reasons that are problems that are coming up?
Because of how they renew, they're always coming out. They basically are on a rolling 5-year thing, so every year, basically we have to say, we're not gonna renew your lease, and then it takes 5 years before it turns. So, and that seems to have been instituted for most of them for quite a while, so it really would take, quite a bit of action to terminate. And obviously, it's pretty hard to terminate central Lincoln PUDs. The one clause that is available to you every year is the rate discussion. You can discuss the rate change.
It's true that we can discuss it, but their contract allows them to raise it within, that certain parameter.
Well, that's golf.
Right, it's golf.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is the percentage that we charge.
Right, okay.
Each franchisee
Okay.
can change. For example, we charge Pioneer a different percentage rate than we do several of the other similar businesses, way the, potentially one. But they provide a very different service in some ways with telephoning than network broadband. We don't charge fee, the franchise fee, because they're a carrier that sits on top of the Pioneer service, for example.
Well, since we charge for a phone whether we want it or not.
Yes, we
By
are.
that.
Yes.
By that conglomerate, maybe we should be charging a peak as well as Pioneer by the same.
But they'll just pass it on to us.
Well, so it's important to know that Peak and Pioneer are the same company.
Right.
They're a separate company.
When I
with the
want
same-
internet, I have to have a phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that will go away with Wave.
Thank God.
You'll be able to get an internet service provider without having a phone. Wave doesn't do phones.
Can't wait.
So these have been in place as long as I've been on council, and I think if I ever knew, it's long been forgotten as to why there's different rates and what the rationale is for the particular rates.
I tried to remember because I remember having the conversation right when I came on board. And I cannot remember the life.
Some of them are statutory. They have a statutory maximum and so on, or, well, not necessarily statutory, but set by rules and regulations, i.e. the SEC. So,
So as far as the max, but.
as far as we can't charge more than.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's worthwhile to, I think just in your learning, you're probably going to want to sort of.
Yeah, so I'm going through each of them, and if I see anything, and I guess I was offering this as a discussion point, and I will provide more information. We have put together a really nice summary of the different franchisees and some of the differences, but I'll also do a little bit more research and see if there's anything kind of worth discussing. The next item is the interpretive center. I got a call from ODOT. They have finally wound through their process and are ready to turn over the interpretive center building to us if we want it. What I'm asking for today is permission to continue that process. The reason I'm asking, I know that previously we said, go ahead, go do it. The reason I'm asking is, these buildings have costs. In looking at the budget, a great example, and I don't mean to pick on the community center, but a great example is the community center. The community center, when I run, and it's an older building, but when I run our cost table analysis on it for the budget, we are in a deficit of about $28,000 running that building. And the revenues don't really address that. That's outside of the revenues. As we absorb some of these buildings, we don't have a building maintenance fund set up for these buildings. So there are line items that we put in there for the buildings to do basic upkeep and fix electrical problems or leaking roofs. But at the end of the day, that is not preventative maintenance, that's reactionary maintenance, and we burn through that budget every year. We should, and it is my hope, and I'm not going to be able to do it this year, But next year, my hope is that we start a building reserve. And this was something that Nancy Leonard talked to us about as a council 12 years ago or so. The importance of building a building reserve and establishing a building reserve and somewhere in place. But fundamentally, the only entity that has a reserve is the library. And they have a reserve because they got a bequeathment. The rest of the buildings, we do not have a reserve, and because of that, if we have significant damage, we are going to have to do an emergency budget transfer. We're going to have to do a supplemental budget. If we've got, the roof cracks here, if there's something substantial, we don't have any long-term reserves, and we really should for these buildings. Much like you do with your home, you start saving because you know that you're going to replace your roof every 25 years, same type of thing. So that
if
said,
somebody could remind me of what, in the past, any of the conversations were about what that interpretive center would be could be used for?
Well, I think
the museum wanted to move over
Yeah.
for one.
so it could be a focal point for the chamber as well.
And the chamber offices, because that's the focal point when they come in.
You could also put a small little coffee cart in there and, start to accumulate some revenue as visitors. So it gets about 2,000 visitors a month or so. That's an opportunity for the entities that are in there to bring in some income, and then they could cover sensibly the costs in terms of the utilities, and it allows us a little bit more control. And when people come down, what do they see about Waldport? Through partnership with the chamber, through partnership potentially with the museum, through partnership with other entities. We could basically create some space to be able to do some things there. The downside is that the building, the reason ODOT's giving away the building is it takes maintenance. The grounds take maintenance, the building takes maintenance, and ODOT's got some pretty good figures on that we've looked at in the past.
are they going to supply that for us? Because of course that's a question from the chamber who's considering whether they can even afford to stay there.
Yeah, so they've provided that in the past. I would start digging through Carrie's records to see if I can find it. I haven't found it yet, but I'm sure that it's there, because Carrie was pretty meticulous about keeping those records. But it wasn't cheap. It was on the order of, similar to what we're seeing with the Umpqua Bank building in terms of utilities, water, et cetera. And so that is kind of why I'm asking, is it's another building that we're probably going to be in the hole on until, and possibly even end up subsidizing, much like we do the community center, the activities that go in. And so that's just something to consider when our budget is not exactly rosy to begin with. It's a plus-minus thing. It's, gives us the building, it gives us the option to start moving some dominoes around, or chess pieces around. But at the end of the day, it is another, asset for us to have, but we have to then take care of it. As they say, not everything free is actually free.
I think they also say there's no such thing as free. And I guess, in order for me to make a decision, personally, I need to look at a bigger picture. I know we've been dancing around all the different entities and where they need to be and what the space needs to be and what our plan is to fulfill that. So trying to answer about one building, separate from that, especially not knowing whether we have the ability to subsidize the museum and the chamber, because they've both been like $1 a year at that. Or if we need to be net revenue neutral, which we have said consistently when we discuss buildings and the Umpqua building and that building, we need to be at revenue neutral. That's a pretty big nut for, so whether the chamber and or the museum could do that.
I think that would be having just looked at the museum's budget, I think that would be a big leap.
Well, and for the chamber too.
Yeah, well,
Other than.
Yeah, and not knowing the chamber's budget
Yeah,
specifically, but
yeah.
I think it would be also very challenging for the chamber. I think what we would end up doing is the chamber would ask us for more money each year, and we would pay that money basically back to ourselves to pay for the
But that's
facility
not
costs.
being revenue neutral.
No, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
we have to decide what what we need and stick to it as much as we can. Many cities do not have an interpret center. So the chamber could relocate to just an office that are open to the public and free the building for something else, but then, so what,
Well, and then ODOT, again,
Yeah,
this is the situation where.
they're gonna get rid of it.
ODOT's gonna get rid of it, we could end up with, they could end up selling it.
Yeah.
And it could be really good, or they could end up, it could either be really beneficial to us or really disappointing to us. And that's kind of that pro-con that I think, I'm kind of asking, do we continue having the conversation with ODOT and try to provide some of the information, and get more directed information, i.e. specifically what do you need to know? Or how do we have the discussion around the different moving pieces that we need to do so that we know that, we want to do it or not?
So by going forward, we're not eliminating any options. Because at any point, we could still say, never mind.
So here's the danger. Here's the danger. By going forward, at some point, ODOT may actually move quickly. So right now, we've been very fortunate in that ODOT has taken about a year and a half to really come back and say, we're ready to go. But they may be meeting by ready to go that, so I sent them a preliminary, letter of interest or a form of interest. They may show up next week, hat in hand with the legal transfer papers, ready for us to execute. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know what happened in that year and a half on their
We
side.
could say no.
But we could then say no.
Right.
But I think if we said no at that point, we might not have an option to come back after we determine that we already want it. So that's out there as just something to keep in mind.
I think you were indicating that a good guess might be that they want to conclude it by the end of the fiscal year.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
And if
I'm not sure.
you're a budgeting entity, that would make a lot of sense, which is to get the papers in place and transfer it so that you have no budget hit in the next year.
But when is the end of their fiscal year? The government is different, isn't it, than ours?
Federal government is October,
Okay,
but this is state government, so it's the same
So it's the
district.
same, okay. So basically, we have a month, and we have that big topic of all of our buildings, and how, I don't think you have had the time yet to really put together a package that we can chew on,
I have not.
that-
And I will say that realistically, given the meeting topics and the things that we need to do, that won't happen until after the 28th. Simply because I've got to get the budget out to
This month.
everybody. Yeah, so this month.
Okay.
I can make it a primary focus of the next, I can basically make it a primary focus of the next meeting. And I believe if ODOT came to us, I can say, okay, well, the council has to approve it, so they have to vote on it.
Right.
So we could potentially have a chance where I could get you that information and you could chew on it for about a week, and then we'd have a council meeting where we may have to make a decision.
Or maybe you could tell them, we will tell you yes or no before the end of the fiscal year.
Yes.
To give us a little bit more time
Yep.
than just.
And they may not talk to us again for again,
Yeah,
this is all
that's-
speculation.
This is ODOT.
We may not hear again for another 6 months after that preliminary thing, say, oh yeah, we're ready. I don't know what their timeline looks like. Honestly, I'm just speculating that given the approach and given the end of the fiscal year, it would make sense if you're dealing with budgets to try to do it before you're incurring more budgetary expense.
I guess the key is we stop pushing them.
Well, yeah, we kind of stopped pushing them a while ago, so
Well, and who else are we gonna sell it to?
that's just it, you don't know.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it makes sense to us.
Who knows who won't buy it.
Yeah.
Yep. So I guess, and I guess I don't necessarily need a motion for this, but until it comes time to actually pull the trigger, then I will absolutely need a motion. But until then, would the best plan be that I provide you, by the time of the next packet, with kind of a building informational sheet of what we have, what assets we have, and then we start having a discussion at the June meeting about how we might utilize each of these different buildings, and what the cost associated with each of the buildings.
And I think we have had, repeatedly in our packet, but it's just, we just never sat down to do it, what all the buildings are and, some of the various plans that Terry put down. So there's some basis there for
Yep.
a start as far as what the operational costs there are. I think we have it on, I'm not sure if we have it on the executive center.
Well, I think it's important to re-put all of those together,
Yeah,
because I
right,
don't think,
right.
like, our insurance costs this year are going up substantially. So, the operating expense of some of these buildings, I don't know that those were ever necessarily included in some of those costs, but we do need to start including them, because they're not triggered.
And then some feedback from, I know the arts group has an interest, we've got the chamber involved, we've got the museum involved, we've got Sue, from the library has some ideas.
Absolutely.
So, some information from each of them as far as, what part they can play or not.
Well, and more importantly, kind of what resources they might be able to bring to the table
Right.
as well. And I think that's an important piece, that I can reach out to each group and say, okay, are you going to be, we can talk about the excitement of building the cultural center, but if we don't have resources to support it.
Okay, I've got a credit card here. Visa, MasterCard.
Are you gonna buy all the buildings and lease them back to us?
Yeah, I'll buy the building.
Okay, so does that seem like a reasonable plan at this point?
Yes, it sounds perfect.
Okay, excellent. All right, the next piece is reopening phases. This is just a quick FYI. So looking at the different plans, City Hall will not open until phase 2. We'll continue operating in the manner we are. I will say that in most cases, people are still getting service from us if they come to the door. It's kind of an on close. We're still trying to accommodate any requests that would come in. Although we are trying to encourage people, if they do come, to follow up with us on email and not come back. The library, there is some distinct plan, and the library board has Oregon Library Association has a distinct reopening guideline. Sue's working on that, but again, that's going to be phase 2. We may be slow into implementing that in phase 2, and the reason there is simply that library's small, and so some of the social distancing guidelines, some of the challenges there are significant when trying to implement some of those services. Now, we've been special in terms of the county in that, and we've actually been on the news, in that the program that they have right now, where they're checking out books and receiving, is actually doing a pretty good turnaround. And that method may work for a while, even after we vote. And I've also made it very clear that there are certain things that we just won't be able to do even when we open. There are certain days that we may close. Now, fireworks being closed may change the 3rd of July pretty radically, but I was going to make sure that we were closed on the 3rd of July, for example, just because the library can't handle that staff. It doesn't have the staffing to handle the crowd. So.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the library and the computers. Every time I go in there, the computers are all full of people, and I could just see that being a big problem for them.
And that is going to be a
They have to
problem.
shut the computer system down.
So they've spent some money, putting in some sneeze guards across the computers. But that is absolutely a concern. There's going to be a time limit associated with how long any patient can be in the library, but that is, it is a challenge.
Definitely.
See, in the community center, right now, might not open until phase 3. And the reason being is the community center is unstaffed. Right now, we're paying a portion of our librarians to kind of schedule the building. But it is unstaffed, which means that we have no way really of doing any of the phase 2 requirements for social distancing that's incumbent on us. For us to start doing those, and unfortunately that led to some pretty upset patrons today. For us to start doing those, would need to be a substantial increase in how we build with ASRS and how we run that building. I don't know how that we do it under phase 2, although I'm absolutely going to look at how we can. Fortunately, historically, we haven't had a lot of the youth programs there during the summer. Those kind of kick in towards the fall. But there are some groups that, we have a Bible church, we have a Lions Club. We do have a number of groups that use that on a regular basis that are feeling frustrated by the inability for us to have that building open. We're looking at how we might do it. We have actually had some pretty big expenses in that building recently with a leaking roof and a couple $3,000 electrical issues. Those are unbudgeted, so we're kind of bleeding from that building. And that led me to actually ask pretty much everybody who had private property in that to kind of remove it so we could, A, it's not insured correctly, we need to have that covered, but B, so that we can do an assessment of the spaces that were in there, knowing that we weren't throwing away some of these valuable desks or valuable possessions. We've gotten some pretty big pushback from that, from the Lions Club, so we're gonna, hopefully, I've tried to communicate that we just need to get some waivers signed and we might be able to take care of it. But at the end of the day, that still leaves us with trying to evaluate those spaces and figure out how we can manage that usage in phase 2. So there's a really good chance that it will be phase 3 before we're able to open that, and that may be looking at that September timeframe. Obviously, the community center is an important piece of how our town works and runs, and so it really is an important thing to try to get back open, but there are some real challenges there.
Is there a way you can give us a breakdown of, you said it's $28,000 in the red.
We have a detailed budget of
Okay.
exactly where all those expenditures go.
Okay. So has it always been like that, or just recently you just?
No, it's been like that for a while. Not as bad as it is now, but it's been like that for a while. One of the biggest challenges is after Lou left, who was managing the facility, we had to split the job into Mark, who was running the Wednesday market, and then Sue, who was handling the scheduling. That really isn't enough to manage the facility building. Okay? We're almost to the point now where we have enough of these buildings that we might actually need a kind of a building facilities manager to go building to building to building and stay on top of things. In the meantime, though, the challenge really has been Mark left, so we don't have somebody doing the Wednesday market coordination. It's very hard based on the salary and that amount to do that. We're hoping that other groups would be able to step in, but then COVID-19 hit and we kind of stopped getting communication from those groups in terms of trying to run another market. And it's challenging. It's challenging to run. And so our Wednesday market has historically been some food, but a lot of trades. You'll notice that the farmers markets that are opening up are essential food goods. It's hard to do kind of the trade services.
But I know that there are groups that are excited about doing it for next year and do want to make it a more vibrant market. So hopefully, that will all get worked out, but, kind of wait for this year.
And that was the challenge, is I think we were going to start having those discussions. Terry indicated that he was going to start having those discussions, and then everything closed. And so by the time we're able to kind of open some of that space, it will be towards when we actually close down for the summer. So, unfortunately, that was a question I got asked by, I think it was the News Times the other day, will there be a Wednesday market? And the answer is, at this point, unless I'm directed to make it happen, no. And if I'm directed to make it happen, I don't know how that would work yet. So, at least with the money that we have, certainly, there's no easy way to do it.
Are you going to have a meeting with the people that use the community center at all? And I just heard bits and pieces, and I'd really like to have Sue on these times, but, because I don't know what's right and wrong, but, I've heard that they had a group that came in on Wednesday nights, and that was $150 we lost because of security issues. The bums would come in and just basically mess up the bathrooms. They'd have to clean it. They'd have the cops out there because they would demand food, and that was one of the issues. Another one is that they're constantly having to clean. They come into the church on Sunday, and all the trash cans are plumb full, and that they told Sue, and nothing's got done. Do we have some kind of a documentation where they can write a request down and we see what's going on?
So I haven't seen any of that yet. I can ask Sue and see if we have a log of some of the complaints and some of the issues. But I think this gets back to, we don't have any staffing.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we need to come up with something, yeah.
And Sue was pretty desperate when we hired Jimmy. Sue was pretty desperate that he'd be able to do some of the outside stuff around the building, simply because it's taking her more time just to go around and pick up the trash in the morning, because we have people sleeping outside. Now, without getting into the details, we did just trespass somebody from both the library and the community center building. But in general, that is a problem, and that's been a problem. When you have a community center that's kind of open, you have people that kind of walk in off the street, and you have to deal with those issues. So,
And I guess you can't lock the doors, right? Or you have to leave those doors unlocked.
well, and exactly, and that starts to be some of the challenges. Okay, how do you get, if you don't have staff there to manage it, so the staff can't come and kind of enforce it, how do the groups feel uncomfortable dealing with somebody coming in from outside? It really becomes an issue.
Right.
So, I think once we have more of a plan, Sue's been communicating with the users, the scheduled users. The building's closed right now on the governor's order. And right now, community centers, I don't believe are scheduled until phase 2, but even then, we won't be able to meet the criteria in phase 2. So again, it'll probably be phase 3. When I start to see a plan in place that we can start to do, that's when I'll probably try to reach out to them and say, okay, it looks like they're going to be able to begin operations. But right now, unfortunately, we're just closed.
I think it's a good time for us to get those things done and figure out a system so where people can document.
Yep. Well, and more importantly, I think we need to figure out who's staffing it. And whether that's staffing multiple buildings and having somebody kind of coordinate that. At some point, we can't operate the building without somebody kind of taking charge of it.
Well, and that also gets back to the reserves for building maintenance, because, obviously fixing stuff when it goes wrong is a lot more expensive in the long run than taking care of the building.
So we've had to up our budget for facility repair and maintenance on the community center from $3,000 a few years ago to about $15,000, because that's what we're averaging now. But that's just responding to the emergencies, basically. So unfortunately, this is what happens to buildings over time. That it's easy to build a building, it's not easy to pay for maintenance. I already talked about the Wednesday market. I have not been approached by any third parties that have any ideas. However, if somebody did approach me, I would put together a proposal and try to submit it to you all. If somebody could come up with an idea that would work under the present restrictions, we'll entertain it in a heartbeat. I don't think we'll be able to use the interior of the building, but the exterior, the lot, everything for a market might be useful. Safe routes for schools. We're again submitting the Safe Routes for Schools grant. We've spent a bunch on the engineering. It's important to note, we've discussed the sidewalk location a couple times. I took a look at the setup up there, and I have recommended that we're moving the sidewalk to the east side of the road instead of the west side of the road. It does mean that they'll have to cross again down towards the school, but I think that can be managed with a flashing light stop sign type of situation. But the east side is one contiguous straight with only a couple ingress and egress points. The west side is a driveway every about 30 feet. So it would be considerably, I believe, more expensive sidewalk creation to match the driveways, and you would have incidents where cars are still backing in and out of the
Is that going to interfere with wave? Because I know that's where they're putting all their cables right now.
No, it should be perfect, because it'll just go on time, the sidewalk will just go right on top of it, and it won't be an issue. And they're putting fiber optics, so it'll be even better. The city insurance, I think I mentioned this earlier, we're looking at about a $14,000 increase in our insurance bill this year. And that is due to a number of different factors, but the biggest one being that, because it's an insurance pool and overall insurances are going up, that we are just seeing an increase overall in the different rates. We did have appraisals on all the buildings, so I have the details on that, but fundamentally, 14,000 is our base increase. The downside to that is that we don't have cyber insurance, which is another about $3,500, and we have no earthquake or flood insurance on any buildings. So I am going to have those quoted, and then I will bring those back to you, hopefully at the June meeting, so that we can decide whether we want to have, say, earthquake coverage on water treatment plants, and those types of structures. So there may be additional costs associated there if we choose to add some of these coverage pieces.
Well, I know at one point or several points we discussed valves that automatically shut off on those tanks in case there's a earthquake. Have we ever done that yet? I don't think that.
I don't know, that's a question I can ask Scott.
Because I think that would be
I believe it was looked at and possibly.
Substantial.
Yeah.
So part of the meter project I'm going to bring to you discusses something around that.
all right.
Something around that. Because it's, one of the requirements in the water master plan is sites and retrofitting of our tanks. And that would address that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess just, I think you may have answered it, but just to clarify, so the increase in the insurance rate is nothing specific to us, but just the pool in general?
The pool in general, our insurance is covered.
So we haven't had any claims?
Nope.
We haven't been part of that? Okay.
No, that is. I will also say that along with insurance, we will see our new request for coverage for the health insurance for the city employees. Our plans are pretty bad, in looking at what they are. So I am using this as an opportunity to explore whether it's just that's what we have, or whether there are some better options out there. And I'll report back on that before we make any decisions. Budget update, the base budget is done. The numbers, I'm going through the numbers with some of the information that I got from the COG. I will say the COG's having some health issues right now in terms of the staff that we were expecting to be out here, but they're still doing a yeoman's job of getting us the information. What that means is I could submit the base budget to you right now, we could go through it. It's pretty dense, but it would meet the requirements, and we could go through the budget meeting and go through that and be fine for next year. That was the metric that we kind of wanted to hit. Over the next few days, what I'm hoping to do before I actually send out the budget to the budget committee is actually put in those pieces and the analysis that has generally come with the budget that provides some understanding of what some of these numbers mean and the ramifications of some of our decisions. And it gives a little bit more of the analysis of why accepting the building might be a good or bad idea, or why some of these numbers are substantially negative and what that means. So I'll be putting that together, and I hope to have the budget to everyone sometime in the next week or so. We had hoped to do it tomorrow, and that was part of the budget schedule. Again, I can give you a very base budget that you can look at and say, wow, this is a big spreadsheet. That's what we end up submitting, or something similar to that is what we end up submitting. But I'm hoping that analysis is worth the extra days that we take. And I'll be doing it over the weekend so that we can get it done as quickly as we can.
I think that analysis is crucial not only for us, but for our budget committee.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too. I think without some of that, it's somewhat meaningless.
Yeah.
The sheriff's office will be back next month. You notice they weren't here today. They will be back next to their report. They are starting to do citations again, so we're going to start seeing citations coming into the municipal court. And then the parks, really quickly, we do have new staff on board. I think that, and you've seen that in kind of the discussions, emails that I've sent. I think that's going to work out really well. We are asking that we route the requests for stuff around town through me, so that I can distribute it to Scott and schedule it. One of the reasons being is I want to make sure that as we're picking up the pieces around town, that then we're following up and making sure that it's done to everybody's satisfaction. That gets confusing if, say, members of the Parks Committee go and start instructing staff how to do what to do and how to do it.
I'm trying to
Rein them in.
corral, yes.
And then the last piece, the library, she had some updates. Specifically, they're using the Umpqua building for social distancing for staff, during this phase one piece. And primarily because they're sharing offices over in the library, and that doesn't meet the standards for being able to operate. Sharon will be using also the big building to prep the summer reading program. And the staff and staff will pick up drop-off window for some of the books and some of that program. And they're asking if they could hang a banner on the Umpqua building for the summer reading program.
As long as they don't get too used to it, I'm just kidding.
That library pickup and drop off at the Umpqua Bank works particularly well.
Yeah, see, so I think, you know, in many ways, and I would have to speak longer with him about this, but in many ways, the Umpqua Bank building, the drive-through and that piece is working really well for a lot of pieces.
Great
Um,
bills.
And according to Pam, she wants it in whatever new building we decide.
To be honest, that may be something that whoever we work with over there, now, we do have some customers who come in and complain when they get a, you know, a $50,000 water bill. Councilor Campbell here, we had some mistakes, that was not the biggest. We had one gentleman got nearly $1 million water bill. That is not common.
Mine was small then.
And we have put a check and balance system in that, so when we do the reads and we look, we specifically are targeting one number so that that won't happen again. This just so happened that they actually did that, and she looked at the number, but because it was 7 digits versus 8 digits or 6 digits or 7 digits, they just didn't notice there was one extra digit, and that's how we had this substantial bill go out. Fortunately, it was caught, and the gentleman thought it was funny, so that's always appreciated. And that is my staff report.
So, we have, well, we have on the list additional public comments from the viewing audience, and I guess we do have.
There's only one in regards to the public hearings. I don't know if you want me to do it out loud or forward it to you as an email for the record.
Go ahead and do it out loud, but forward it also for.
And hopefully I say the name right, so I'll spell it too. From a Louis Orndorff, spells his name Louis, last name Orndorff. And his question is, has an environmental impact study been conducted that would show impact of road and construction efforts?
Speaking of the View Vista?
Correct. He's also asking if there will be complete minutes and copies of all submissions referenced by the speakers today available. And I'll forward this email on to you guys.
Thank you. And then I also received an email in regard to the hearing as well, and this was from Sam DeFazio. And he says that he didn't participate or listen on the entire hearing due to work, but his thoughts on the situation, which is next to the land, the proposed project, and he thinks it's all unfair to have daily life disrupted. And some, concerns about the not only temporarily but permanently. And then also noted that there was an excessive amount of white noise from the camera reading live stream meeting and difficulty from speakers in the room.
I actually got that a little bit too. I was trying to adjust it. It's actually coming from one of your mics. Eric says that before the next meeting, he will try and tweak some of them and see if he can't fix that for you.
Okay.
I did do some adjustment
And
on our side to help it get better, but
And I will go ahead and forward, make a copy that I did include in the packet of information.
Did you have any comments?
Who was the second person? I got the first one. Because you spelled it out.
A Sam DeFazio, DeFazio.
Okay, any council comments or concerns? Seeing none.
This meeting is running long. Just
So this is the first packet I've kind of sat down and put together with Rita. And one of the things we did was sit down and scored all of the different options, how long we thought they would take. And we are just about on time for what we thought we knew it was going to be a long meeting with this hearing.
Is that true?
Unfortunately.
Okay, well then, the next item is an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602H. Open the council concerning the legal rights of the public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. We expect any action